Welcome back. During the pandemic lockdown, programs like the Open Restaurants Initiative were a lifeline for restaurants struggling to stay open. However, over 2 years later, organization CUEUP warns that unregulated expansions could endanger residential neighborhoods and small businesses. Stuart Waldman, a member of the Facilitation Committee for CUEUP, joins me to discuss this concern. Stuart, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, can you talk a little bit about CUEUP and how it was created?
Yeah, CUEUP was created out of necessity. When the outdoor dining program started in June of 2020, right after the lockdown, and the restaurants at that time weren't allowed to have indoor dining, even after the lockdown was eliminated. So the city set up this outdoor dining, a temporary program, an emergency program, so they can make money. The restaurants could stay in business, and so people could eat out because there was no other way to eat out. It took a year before you had 100% indoor dining. We neighbors didn't mind the temporary program at all. We thought, oh yeah, this is necessary. I mean, the city is in dire straits. In September of that year of 2020, we heard the thing you're making it permanent. In other words, after everything returns to normal, these sheds are still going to be here. And to us, it was like having sandbags after a flood, and you don't remove the sandbags. You keep them there. So a bunch of block associations and neighborhood groups, at the beginning, mainly in neighborhoods that had a lot of the outdoor dinings, like West Village, Greenwich Village, East Village, Chinatown. We formed this group called CUEUP, eventually expanded to Queens and Brooklyn.
Now, can you explain the significance of the community blueprint for outdoor dining and its goals?
Yeah, the community blueprint for outdoor dining came up because the city wasn't listening to us. We kept saying, they didn't even hold public hearings about the bill to make outdoor dining permanent. And so we said, well, we have to offer an alternative because we're being depicted by the city as people who don't like outdoor dining. And nothing could be further from the truth. I like outdoor dining like anybody else. But what happened is that before the pandemic, there were 1,200 outdoor dining locations throughout the city, restaurants that had outdoor dining. The outdoor dining program, as envisioned by the city, said, we're going to have it anywhere and everywhere and anytime. And we said, wait a second, you got to think about this. There are neighborhoods that are primarily residential that have a few storefronts that shouldn't have these. You got to think of what is the best way to make it work. And the city wasn't doing it, so we came up with our own blueprint. And in our blueprint, some of the key items, we want to get rid of the roadway sheds, the outdoor dining sites that are in between parked cars, eating in between parked cars, which before the pandemic, people would say, what are you, crazy? Having a picnic between parked cars? So that we felt, there's something like 50% of the 13,000 outdoor dining sites were in between parked cars. And we said, well, they cause 95% of the problems because for example, I live in Greenwich Village, and in my block we have 5 outdoor dining sites, and each one can't be moved. Like a car is moved to the alternate side, can't move it. So my street hasn't been fully swept for 3 years and will never be fully swept because these big sheds stay there, immovable, and you can't clean. That causes trash, which causes rats. There's a lot of rats because it's a heaven for rats. They can hide underneath the sheds. There's food. It's like a hotel. So we figured you get rid of that first. And still, in our blueprint, we are expanding. We have room for expansion from 1,200 sites to 6,000, 5 times. But the hospitality industry, the restaurants, want it everywhere and anywhere because they're fairly greedy.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you pointed that because I noticed that like when you said that, I'm like, you know what, it actually makes sense. Maybe that is why we're having so many rats because we're eating outdoors more. Because I'm sure like it's been a problem for New York forever, but
Yep.
it seems like we're focused on it a lot now because it's probably the issue has been heightened, and I could imagine that's part of the reason why. Now I'm curious to know like what are your thoughts on basically in some areas where there's been like abandoned sheds due to outdoor dining, they're not necessarily using it anymore, but do you think that could be contributing to the problem or maybe a concern that you have about outdoor dining?
It's a concern, but to me, it's not the major concern because abandoned shed is unsightly. It's terrible. It's ridiculous that the city leaves them there. But that's one of the problems. A restaurant goes out of business. Who's responsible for getting rid of it? And so the city is really slow. To me, the real problem is the sheds with people in it because there's noise. I across from me there are two sheds. 50 people on weekends. There are 50, 75 people eating there, drinking there. Now, before the pandemic, if you had 5 people drinking in your neighborhood, it would be called drunk and disorderly. Now, if 75 people drink $100 bottles of wine, it's called outdoor dining, and it's very noisy.
Now, can you discuss the importance of regulating the outdoor dining program and what would that look like?
Well, right now according to the law that they've just passed, it's in the hands of the Department of Traffic, the DOT. The DOT is not equipped to do this. Before the pandemic, Department of Consumer Affairs ran it. They ran it fine. We had no complaints. There were places in my neighborhood, never heard a complaint about outdoor dining. The DOT doesn't know how to do this. They've done it for 2 years. They've done a miserable job, and they don't have enough people. They're talking right now, as I said, there are 13,000 sheds. They're talking about expanding it without hiring one more enforcement agent. And there's no enforcement, and there can't be any enforcement.
Now, the coalition highlights the importance of allowing community boards to do their job. Can you just elaborate on, why this aspect is crucial and what is their job in this regard?
Well, a community board is the closest representative to the people of a community. They are not elected, but they're appointed by elected officials. So it's democratic. You elect an official who appoints a council member, borough president who appoints a member of the community board. Here is where you can go and give your complaints. Here people can hear you. And while their resolutions are only advisory, they are important so you can hear it. So we feel that restaurants should appear in a timely manner, giving community boards enough time to consider, is this right? Is this site right? It's next to a lot of residents. There's never been a restaurant there. Restaurants are taking over small businesses because if you're a landlord and you want to charge a lot of money, well, if I rent to a dog grooming place, let's say, they don't make that much money. But restaurants sell alcohol. Alcohol, the profits are high. In my neighborhood alone, in the last 5 years, former businesses that weren't restaurants have gone out of business and have been replaced by a restaurant. In my street alone, I say one little block, 10 storefronts have become restaurants.
Now, how does CUEUP envision the rebuilding of New York City for a post-pandemic and climate-friendly future?
That's a big question. We would like, as I said, we have nothing against outdoor dining. Our vision about outdoor dining is that it should be tables and chairs on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant with enough room for people to walk by. Right now, sometimes they're right on the curb. There should be no sheds. We don't care if the sheds are replaced again by parking spaces, although it would be a great opportunity to have little parklets, to have more bike parking, more city bike. You could expand everything, replacing this profit-making business with stuff for everyone. Because there are close to 9 million people in the city. The median household income in New York is under $70,000 a year. Most can't afford dining out a lot. This is a program for tourists and the people who have money that can afford restaurants.
Now, CUEUP works in collaboration with other organizations around the city. What role do these alliances play in advancing the future of outdoor dining policies?
Well, we represent something like 30,000 people through various organizations. There are block associations, there are citywide organizations, and we feel we should really have a big role. But right now we don't. Right now, the reimagining of the future of New York City is in the hands of lobbyists. This outdoor dining bill was created by lobbyists who were paid a lot of money to advance that bill, and the city council really didn't listen to us. As I said, they didn't hold a public hearing. They refused to have an environmental impact study, which is essential. An environmental impact study isn't just about pollution. It's about your lived environment, traffic, noise, stuff like that. And they refused. We're in court with them now, and we're confident we're going to win.
Now, what steps can New Yorkers take to support CUEUP's mission and goals for outdoor dining policies? As I can imagine, this is affecting a lot of different neighborhoods, and it could be causing a rift between, the relationship between the neighborhood and the people who are going there. So what can New Yorkers do?
Well, they could go on our website and get all the information, and they could join as individuals, but we really would love more community groups to join and continue this fight, because it's not over. We're not going away, despite what the restaurant industry wants.
Right. And I'm actually glad that you brought up like a few things that I never thought of before, because as somebody just like maybe on the outside, I don't have a lot of restaurants in my neighborhood. It seems like a great idea. And it's always like brought as like a really amazing, great, like vibrant idea to the city. But to hear, especially the rats part, that part stuck out to me a lot, to hear other concerns about it. I just thought like, oh, wow, this is something that we're not really thinking about and how it's affecting people in the neighborhood specifically. If you can quickly just tell us, like, what that experience is like for people in those neighborhoods.
Yeah. If you're dining in a shed, look up at the windows. See that there are people there just like you. Some of them have children. Some of them are older like me. They want to sleep. And as your group is singing happy birthday at the top of your lungs, consider what that does to the people, and consider yourself in that window. And I really feel if when I dine outdoors, I make sure to dine in a place that doesn't have a shed and doesn't have a lot of people around it, because I know the problems it causes. It's not a problem like, affordable housing. It's not a big issue, but daily living with trash, living with rats, living with noise, living with traffic gets on you.
Right.
And the city should really pay attention to that. And they're not. They're paying attention to what the businesses want, what a particular business wants.
Well, I want to thank you so much for, sharing these concerns with us and kind of opening our eyes to this issue.
But thank you for listening.
To learn more about CUEUP Community Blueprint for Outdoor Dining, please go to their website at www.cuepny.com/community blueprint. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back right after this.